A few nights ago, something terrifying happened at the cafe where I work as a bartender, and it's still haunting me. I'll do my best to recount it. Our cafe doubles as an event venue, coffee and lunches by day. And at night, we host various events like bands and comedy shows. On this particular night, there was an open mic comedy show. However, with fewer comedians turning up, we decided to close early. As I was preparing to close and head home, a patron arrived and ordered a single beer during the dwindling comedy show. He seemed nervous. But being a female bartender, I've encountered shy or reserved male customers before, so I didn't think much of it. He sat quietly, sipping his drink while watching the show. After seeing off the last customers and readying to lock up, I noticed the same man walking down the back hallway and into the men's restroom. Within moments, he burst out, urgently calling for help, claiming there was a flood in the restroom. He insisted I join him in cleaning it up. Instinctively cautious, I stood at a distance and reassured him that I'd handle it, attempting to close up for the night. His persistence and aggression escalated when he tried to forcibly grab my arm, demanding my presence in the restroom. I firmly refused and ushered him out, locking the door behind him. Upon checking the supposedly flooded restroom, it was impeccably clean, no signs of any issues. Feeling increasingly uneasy, I discreetly armed myself with a pocket knife for safety while continuing my closing tasks. While tending to the espresso machine and arranging liquor bottles, I heard a tapping noise. Looking up, I saw the same man tapping and waving maniacally from outside. Obscured by the front window and curtains, he attempted to force entry, violently threatening me. Reacting on adrenaline, I brandished my knife, warning him and threatening to call the police. Despite my warning, he seemed unfazed, but eventually walked out of sight. My adrenaline plummeted, and I locked myself in the office, dialing 911 in tears, describing the terrifying situation and my isolation. Shockingly, the police didn't arrive even after waiting for an hour and a half. I called my boyfriend, who rushed to the shop. Meanwhile, my manager monitored security cameras from home to ensure the man didn't return. With my boyfriend's support, I completed the closing procedures and drove home safely, followed closely by him. Since then, I've arranged for my male busboy to accompany me during work, and the managers have kept a vigilant eye on security cameras to ensure my safety. I grew up in a small, secluded town with barely any public transport, just a sporadic bus that came once a week for inbound or outbound travel. Leaving home at 17, I moved to a larger town where my work often ended between midnight and 4 a.m. When I couldn't secure a ride or felt too tired to walk, I'd rely on taxis. However, some of these encounters turned unnerving. There were instances where drivers deliberately took me off route for extra money despite having GPS directions, or even tried to pocket more cash than I owed. Living mostly alone due to my housemate's absence, at 17, I didn't grasp the eerie reality of certain taxi drivers, now in my 20s. Others I've met share horrifying experiences: molestation attempts, robberies, and even kidnappings by taxi drivers. In one incident around 1:02 a.m., a taxi driver engaged in usual conversation but took an unsettling turn. When I mentioned having the house to myself most weeks, he ominously advised against sharing such information. The atmosphere grew tense, and I fell silent. But he persisted in trying to engage me further. After paying, he lingered in the driveway with the taxi's lights on, initially assuming he was turning around. However, he stayed for an unnaturally long time. Later, I heard a car door close, initially ignoring it until the neighbor's dog barked. This dog only reacted when someone entered our backyard through the side gate. Panicked, I turned off all the lights, armed myself, and listened, confirming someone was attempting to access the downstairs doors and windows. I dialed the police, whispering in fear, only to be met with an unsympathetic and dismissive operator who accused me of prank calling. Even after explaining the situation repeatedly, she fixated on the notion of a taxi driver being present and threatened me with fines if I called. Again, the taxi eventually left after I disclosed its departure. But the following day, I found multiple large shoe prints encircling the house, solidifying my belief that the taxi driver had sinister intentions beyond mere robbery. After graduating high school, I relocated away from my family and moved back to Alaska, where I attended college. Conveniently, my mother had been renting out our old house, and when its long-term tenants departed, I was granted the place. Juggling work to cover payments, my mother thankfully chipped in. Amidst this, I had just endured an unclean breakup with a girl who had stayed with me in the rented house. Adding to the already dysfunctional relationship, winter break rolled in, and I found myself spending more time indoors. Feeling the absence of a stable relationship and residing in a secluded area, without nearby neighbors, one late afternoon, after assuming the breakup drama had subsided, my phone incessantly rang from an unknown number. Typical start to unsettling events. It was my ex, intoxicated and hurling insults, followed by an oddly threatening conversation with her boyfriend, prompting my abrupt but polite hang-up. Days passed, and a chilling incident occurred. While lounging on the living room couch watching TV, the reflection in the screen revealed a figure standing behind me, an unnerving discovery. Frozen in place, armed only with my instincts, I observed as the figure moved away, raising red flags considering the remote location of the house and the absence of any attempt at conversation or visitation. Similar unnerving situations followed. A car parked in the driveway, with no one exiting and inconspicuously driving off. Although disconcerting, I didn't perceive an imminent threat. Then came a night when I received another call from an unknown number, her again, requesting an apology meeting outside. Despite my reluctance, I ventured out into the darkness. As I approached her parked car, tensions escalated when her boyfriend arrived. Confronting me aggressively, a scuffle ensued, ending with threats and him driving away. After inviting my ex inside for the night, I awoke to banging at the back door directly below my room. Alarmed, I retrieved a baseball bat and cautiously descended the stairs, anticipating danger. The silence after the banging ceased was eerie, until a creaking sound approached me from the darkness, prompting me to strike with the bat. With a flash and a bang, I realized I had hit her boyfriend, who had fired a gun at the floor. Overwhelmed, I called the authorities, witnessing his transport by paramedics. Despite his recovery, a restraining order was filed. Surprisingly, my ex and I reconciled as friends, and she never returned to that relationship. I contemplated moving, but ultimately stayed, grateful nothing more occurred since that harrowing incident. Three and a half years ago, I made a colossal mistake that shattered everything good in my life. Growing up in a household with minimal supervision alongside my two sisters, we were often left to fend for ourselves in an empty house for long stretches. It forced us to mature prematurely. Despite this environment, I managed to navigate high school relatively well. My rebellious phase consisted mostly of smoking weed, which seemed minor in today's world. However, one fateful night, I found myself out late with three older acquaintances, none of whom were close friends. They were a rougher crowd, but I tagged along to feel a sense of belonging. Among them was Trip, the most daring of the bunch and a known dealer. He flaunted a small bag of what he claimed was coke, a substance I knew very little about. Being the youngest, I tried to appear nonchalant, but my discomfort was obvious. Instead of easing the tension, they mocked me, making me feel smaller. As conversation shifted, Trip began speculating about my tolerance for the substance. Foolishly, I tried to appear tough by claiming I could handle it and might even need more. That bravado backfired when Trip poured out half the bag onto the table, using a Wendy's rewards card to portion it. I felt trapped, pressured to prove myself to these peers. Reluctantly, I went along, but it wasn't cocaine. It was some dangerous counterfeit mix. What happened next is a blur. I lost control. Ended up stripping naked, screaming incoherently, and attracting the attention of the police. I woke up in a cell, facing severe charges, including resisting arrest, despite being a minor. I was charged as an adult due to the legal proceedings extending beyond my 18th birthday. My parents and so-called friends offered no support. I'm still battling the consequences, probation, and a felony staining my record. It's a haunting reminder of my monumental, foolish error. To anyone listening, heed the elementary school lessons. Just say no to drugs. It's a cautionary tale I wish I'd heeded.